Hi everyone, I hope this message finds you well. Today I wanted basically to help you see and to explore how to see through the duality, the polarity that is existing between empaths and narcissists. What do I mean by that? I'm going to talk about it a little later. But before getting there, I want to create some sort of clarity because we are very often confusing two terms. The first one is empath, the second one is codependent. We often use them interchangeably, which is not very accurate, because an empath is someone that is really attuned to their sensitivity, really attuned to their feelings, and very attuned to or capable to connect or to relate to how other people are also feeling. So it is possible to be an empath without being codependent, or it is possible to be an empath with a very, very low degree of codependency, because I tend to see everything as a spectrum, which means we can either have an extremely high degree of codependency, meaning self-betrayal is just a second language. We try to manage other people's experiences, other people's perspectives. We can have a high degree of codependency, or we can have a very, very measured small degree of codependency. So it's very possible to be an empath that is at peace with your own sensitivity and at the same time has a high degree of self-love and not really high codependent tendencies. So when I talk about the polarity here, I'm talking about the codependent empath and narcissists. And the first observation that I want to make is very often codependent empaths grew up in households where they were raised by one or many narcissistic caregivers. That is an observation that I've made. And since they were raised by one or many narcissistic caregivers, what often happens is they build inside an inner critic that has that narcissistic voice, and they mirror that inside. So let me explain a little bit here. I'm inviting you to look at the inner critic as the police of your conditioning. When we were children, we usually just observed and absorbed. So we observed the good parts of the conditioning that are, I would say, loving, compassionate, and accepting, and all of that. We also observed and absorbed the more negative parts of the conditioning. And I'm talking about here the shaming aspects. And if you had a caregiver that was a narcissist, it's very, very possible that you absorbed as well that part of your conditioning, and the storehouse for that is the inner critic. So usually codependent empaths, they have that duality that's built inside between the wounded inner child that is rooted in their sensitivity and the need or the desire to please, to manage other people's feelings and perspectives and all of that. And on the other side, there is the narcissistic inner critic that is constantly shaming, constantly self-abusing. Now, what I want to say here is usually there is this polarity that is born where we either identify in one moment as the wounded child, sensitive, or we identify as the narcissist that is aggressive towards the inner child so that you may behave. And also what happens is usually we create that kind of bond. Since we've had a narcissistic parent, we create a bond. We start to see these expressions as love, as an expression of love, and therefore we unconsciously start looking for it on the outside, and it's very, very unconscious. And other people would say, if we really want to put it in a bigger picture and relating it to things like the law of attraction, for example, it is the simple fact that you are unconsciously hosting a loud inner critic voice that is rooted in narcissistic tendencies, that inner critic voice that is constantly aggressive with yourself. That is something that you mirrored from the narcissistic caregiver. This is also precisely what causes you to bring your way all these people with narcissistic tendencies. So the very first step is to actually begin to oppose, to build that inner parent that can take the defense of the child within you. A third voice that can actually oppose what the narcissistic inner critic says inside. And the more you are able to challenge that voice, the more you are able to take the defense of your own wounded inner child. What happens is you are also withdrawing your power from the inner critic. And what that does is, first, you are able to see that narcissistic inner critic inside. And the simple fact to be able to see that narcissistic inner critic inside, it takes you off the spell of seeing narcissistic tendencies unconsciously as an expression of love. It takes you off that spell that usually happens because we've had a caregiver that had narcissistic tendencies. It starts to breach the bond, the trauma bond, and it puts you at a place where you can start seeing more and more on the outside. Oh, this person that is coming my way right now has narcissistic tendencies. I can see that. I recognize that kind of voice. It feels like the voices that I'm telling myself when I'm really, really low and I'm really, really self-shaming, or the voices that, my parents, my mom, my dad used to tell me. So when you start building that third voice within you and challenge the narcissistic inner critic within you, it gives you that position of power. And in my experience, it's also very necessary to relate the work of stepping out of the position of the wounded child with a certain degree of shadow work. Because what I've seen, in order to be submissive, in order to just receive the abuse of the narcissistic caregiver or teachers or bullies that you had in your life, there is something that very often we suppress, we deny, we disown, and that thing is usually anger. We often suppress the anger. So that journey of healing requires a reclamation of the anger. And a lot of people see anger as something that is bad, but it's not necessarily something that is bad. If you strip anger from care, then it becomes aggression, and therefore it starts, creating hurt. But when you welcome the deep essence of anger, which is a guardian of power, when you welcome that deeper meaning of anger with a heart open, without removing your capacity to care, what it does, it becomes something that signals you that I am being abused in this moment, and it is safe for me to do something about it. It is safe for me to do something about it. So that reclamation of anger puts you at a place where that anger is available for you on tap, not so that you can be aggressive to the other person, but so that you can start to take a stand for yourself. When the anger is not here available on tap, it's extremely hard to take a stand for yourself, basically. So that inner child needs you, the adult that you are today, to start taking a stronger stance, to start literally defending yourself against not only the voices of the narcissistic inner critic within you. And the more you are able to do that, it will position you in a place where you are able to see, recognize, and also challenge everyone that would come your way with narcissistic tendencies. So this is a small, not that small, message to help you see through that duality. And I want to say, if you identify as a codependent empath, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing broken about you. And as always, it only means that you weren't modeled the right things, it doesn't mean that there is something wrong with you. I hope this helps, and if it does, please share it with people who might need it. I'm sending you so much love, and I'll talk to you soon.